Well, I forgot the first rule of doing anything on the computer yesterday. I had recorded episode 17 last night of podcast. I got up to do something and I did not save the podcast. The computer went to sleep. I got distracted and I lost it. What an idiot. But here I am, your humble host, Beezy, of whom many songs and many swear words have been composed over the years, with episode 17 of Beezy's Stream of Consciousness podcast. Coming to you from Starbase One studio. And we've got a lot of ground to make up. I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to do two casts tonight or do one long one. I know we went long on episode 16, almost an hour, and don't necessarily want to do that again. I know your time is valuable, and I want to be cognizant of that. So, but we're definitely going to read a chapter of Cloaks and Barbs. Tomorrow is Friday, so we're going to do our top 10 on Friday. And then we've got a lot going on this weekend. On Saturday, Susan, Brandon, and I are going to be going to a Jeep event in Bridgeport. We're going to be off-roading, wheeling as they call it in the Jeep community. We'll be going off-road, and so that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. And of course, Sunday is Father's Day. So the clan's going to be coming over that evening and feeding me and pampering me and all that kind of good stuff. So definitely looking forward to all of that. But we definitely want to get into the show here and cover what we need to cover. So stand by and we'll be right back. Okay, we're going to be reading Chapter 7, Cloaks and Barbs, which I already read last night, but I'll read it again. And, got me to thinking, I unearthed all of my other manuscripts. I've also got Boogeymen, which is my other self-published novel, which I'll be reading once we're done with this. But I was rereading some of my old manuscripts that I haven't done anything with, and man, I've got one of those that, if I do say so myself, I can't put down. And I'll definitely be sharing that with everybody here at some point. And anyway, I hadn't picked any of that stuff up in a long, long time, so I'm looking forward to sharing all that with you. So anyway, let's just delve right into Chapter 7 of Cloaks and Barbs. And here we go. Three Cliffs Bay near Pennard Castle, Swansea, Wales. He waded ashore in the shallows before a sandy beach. The sun was now below the horizon, and the lower western half of the sky glowed reddish-orange. Having clad himself in a large cloak he had found in the boat, he could now travel the roads without concern for his appearance. He looked up and saw the ruins of a stone structure beyond the beach. It was large and in disrepair, and appeared to date back to the humans' feudal period when they had to construct such structures to protect themselves from each other. These were curious creatures, he reflected as he walked up the beach. They possessed rudimentary intelligence and were mildly competent with tools, but they had no sight. He could not imagine such an existence, one where the future was always a mystery. And their strange affinity for emotions was also puzzling. As his race had purged themselves of emotions ages ago, he found them distasteful and distracting. How the humans were able to function with emotions and no sight, he could not tell. It did not matter, however. The aggressors on the continent had agreed to ally themselves with his people, and soon they would have the means to take what they needed from the northern province of this island nation. As useful as the site was, it was cloudy now. The aggressor leaders' mood swings continued to put all future events in doubt, and the chances of this mission's success stood only at 70%. The recurring images of the submarine and the human communications team were troubling to him. The submarine's role in the upcoming events was still uncertain, and he had neither the time nor the resources to move against it. He was, however, close to the communications team location, and he was sure that if he could disrupt their activities, he would be that much closer to overall mission success. With singular purpose, he skirted the front of the ancient stone structure and passed into the darkening fields beyond. Wolfschanze. How do you wish to proceed? Hitler had recalled the visitors from the lounge where they had waited patiently for the Nazi leaders to decide their course of action. Upon my order, began Sayre, more of our spheres will enter the atmosphere and fall into England. They contain warriors who will seize key installations, telephone exchanges, power plants, and radio stations. The entire island will be secured in less than 5 days, after which you, Chancellor, will contact the British Prime Minister and outline the terms of England's surrender. In the meanwhile, what are we to do? Asked Rommel. You may continue whatever operations that you have in place, he responded. However, one of the terms of our alliance is that once Churchill has capitulated, you leave the island to us. And what of America? Asked Goring, sucking noisily on a boiled sweet. She has a large contingent of ground troops in England and continues to resupply the nation by sea. America's ground forces will meet the same fate as Britain's, Oracle replied. Any ships that approach Britain will be dealt with by us. How exactly will you accomplish this? Asked Rommel. What weapons will you employ? Let us merely say that we have the resources to neutralize your adversaries, Warziger said. How we will do that will be our affair. Yes, said Sater. The American leaders will see that England is a lost cause and will abandon her to us. She will retreat across the ocean and redirect her efforts to defeating the island nation in the Pacific Ocean. And then you will begin your activities in Scotland, asked Rommel. That is correct, said Oracle. With England neutralized and America in retreat, we will start the second phase of our operation. And what of us? Asked Foreman. You will be free to prosecute this conflict however you choose, said Sayre. With no more aerial bombardment from England, your cities may rebuild their infrastructure, and your industry may resume building more materiel unmolested. Continental Europe will be yours for the taking. Just like that, Hitler said softly. Just like that, Sayre said, nodding his hooded head stiffly. We will continue our operations without distraction, and you can do the same. How long will you conduct your Scottish operation? Rommel asked. We will leave a garrison in the British Islands to ensure a steady flow of that which we need, Oracle said mysteriously. This garrison will be there permanently? Asked Keitel. We will remain for at least your lifetimes and perhaps longer, said Sayre. We anticipate our harvest to be sustainable for at least 50 of your years. Several of the men blanched at the use of the word harvest. Will our peoples interact at all? Mingala asked suddenly. The strangers turned slowly and stiffly towards each other for a moment. We anticipate some interaction in the future, Warziger said vaguely. Rommel leaned back in his seat and lit a cigarette. You said that you could be in England for 50 years or more, he mused. I suppose that your harvest will exhaust itself at that time. What happens then? Will you simply depart and return to your home, wherever that is? The visitors paused again and appeared to consult each other silently. The future is always in doubt, Warziger replied after a moment. When the harvest is completed in Scotland, we will turn to other sources. Himmler nodded as though he suddenly understood. Tell us, he said softly, is there anywhere else on this planet where you may harvest whatever it is that is now in Scotland? Our survey teams have found it thus far only in Scotland, said Oracle after a pause. Thus far? Himmler asked. Interesting. He turned to look at Hitler. I should like some sort of guarantee that these people will restrict their harvesting activities to Scotland. It would be unfortunate if they decided to harvest in the lands of the Reich at some point in the future. That is a good point, Hitler said, fixing the visitors with a hard stare. What do you say to that, Herr Sayre? What sort of guarantee can you give us that you will not turn to Germany or her lands when Scotland no longer provides that which you covet. What sort do you require, Chancellor? Replied Sayre. Paper agreements are worthless. You proved as much when you signed the non-aggression pact with your former ally, the Soviet Union, and oral commitments are dubious at best. An outward sign of their goodwill, perhaps, my Fuhrer, suggested Bormann. Perhaps there is some token that they could give us to keep safe until their business with our world is concluded. Hitler raised his eyebrows and considered the idea. Well, Herr Sayre, he said at length, if we cannot rely on words spoken or written, is there a bond you could leave in our possession until our association is over? A bond? Oracle asked, and the Nazi leaders could all detect a trace of confusion in the voice. We have a custom among our people, Himmler said, taking Hitler and Bormann's lead, where certain consideration is given between two parties who conduct business in lieu of a verbal promise. In certain circles, we refer to it as a bond. Surely, if you have studied our culture, you know of this. Once again, there was silence as the three strangers appeared to consult one another. The Germans waited until at last Sayre turned back to them. We know of this custom, he said. However, such a bond usually involves a monetary exchange. We know that your kind values trace metals and crystals. We have them aplenty on our homeworld, which is far away. But we have something that is, to us at least, far more valuable. Behold. Sayre opened his black cloak and threw back his hood. Several of the Germans gasped in shock, and a couple even cried aloud, despite having seen Mengele's pictures of Weizsäcker's corpse. Even Bormann, who had seen the body of Bote back at the Eagle's Nest firsthand, turned white and fainted, falling forward onto the conference table with a thump. Hitler himself blanched, and his eyes went wide with horror. Only Mengele did not register any shock as he leaned forward in his chair, studying the sight before him intently. Mother of God, breathed Himmler. Incredible, said Mengele softly. Standing before them was a nearly 3-meter tall biped with dark reddish crinkled skin. Its arms were long and thin, and ended not in hands, but rather 2 long feelers or fingers. The legs were thick, and each had a similar 2-toed apparatus where a foot should be. The head, though, was the most striking. It reminded Mengele of an enormous shriveled apple, although it was considerably larger than a human head. There was a small opening where a mouth should have been, but there was no nose nor ears. There was no hair as such to be seen, and 3 red, bulging eyes stared at them from the forehead area. Does my appearance frighten you, gentlemen? Sayre asked, although the tiny mouth did not move. It's fascinating, Mengele said in astonishment. It's disgusting, whimpered Goring, as sweat ran down his fat face. If our people still had emotions, I would be flattered by the scientist and offended by the obese flyer, Sayre said. However, I have unmasked myself to show you the bond we can provide. He took his long fingers and appeared to burrow them into his midsection. He appeared to be searching for something inside his torso, and presently withdrew a smooth gray orb approximately the size of a golf ball. It was covered in a clear, slimy gel, and Sayre placed it on the conference table directly in front of Goring. Oracle and Weizsäcker followed suit and placed theirs alongside Sayre's. Curiously, none of the aliens showed any sign of intrusions on their skin. What the devil are those? Goring asked as he tried unsuccessfully to melt into the cushions of his chair. Yes, what are they? Asked Mengele, eagerly coming forward to examine them. I am afraid that your anatomy does not have such a structure, Sayre explained, and your limited vocabulary does not have an adequate word for it. Call them what you will, but understand that my comrades and I have given over to your safekeeping things that we can ill afford to lose. Within these orbs are our life forces. If they are damaged, we take injury, and if they are destroyed, we die. We leave them with you as tokens of our goodwill, such as it is. Keep them well. Mengele, said Hitler with difficulty, see to their safekeeping. Indeed I will, my Fuhrer, exclaimed Mengele. He looked up at Sayre, who had again robed himself. May I? They will keep indefinitely, Sayer advised. They require no maintenance. I would request, however, that you place them somewhere where they will not be handled much. How will you function with them outside your bodies? Mingala asked, leaning over them and studying them from every angle. In time, we should teach you much about our physiology, Oracle said. But for now, let us say that as long as these orbs exist, we exist, no matter if the vastness of space separates us. I did not see one of these when I performed my autopsy on Bote, said Mingala to Hitler carelessly. He suddenly realized what he had said and looked at the three aliens. He stammered. My apologies, I simply meant. When Bote died, said Warziger, taking no offense, his orb was destroyed. That is why you never found it. Now that we have provided you with our bond, Chancellor, said Sayer, are we in agreement to proceed? USS Barb. Sonar reports machinery and screw noises on 035 relative, reported the talker, fireman, second class Quincy. Matthew's response was immediate. Up scope, he ordered. He grabbed the handles and was at the eye cups before it stopped its upward travel. Okay, fellas, he said excitedly. Solution. Set, replied Dunaway at the TDC. Match bearings and fire. The boat trembled as one torpedo left the tube. Sonar reports air-blowing noises, sir, relayed Quincy. Target surfacing. I'll be damned, said Matthews, watching through the periscope. He watched as the U-boat surfaced in a bubbling mass of foam. It quickly turned and began speeding away, its diesel exhaust belching black smoke. There he is, and there he goes. He's making a run for it. The fish is going to miss unless he turns into it. General quarters, battle surface, all ahead flank. Barb's hull resonated with the general quarters gong, as well as the sound of compressed air being forced into the ballast tanks. In moments, the boat was on the surface, and Matthews was on the bridge, flanked by his lookouts, quartermaster and talker. Smoke was already billowing from the diesel exhaust aft as Lieutenant Gray and his engineers brought the boat's engines up to flank speed. The sudden surfacing of both boats caused the tiny rowboat to capsize, dunking its occupant. Matthews briefly wondered what would happen to the German sailor, but just as quickly dismissed the thought. Less than 3 miles away, off the port bow, a German U-boat was making a high-speed run, trying to escape. Matthews could see the German gunners hurriedly getting to the U-boat's deck guns and machine guns ready. Barb's gun crews were already on deck, doing the same. Come left 5 degrees, Matthews said as he tried to put Barb on the U-boat's stern. Sonar reports the fish missed wide, Quincy reported. Very well, Matthews grumbled. I didn't think we'd hit a damn thing anyway. Tell engineering to give us everything the old girl's got. The U-boat's pulling away. Quincy relayed the order while Matthews watched the enemy through his binoculars. Mr. Dunaway to the bridge, he shouted into the conning tower hatch. In seconds, Dunaway was standing next to his captain, watching the retreating U-boat through his own binoculars. Looks like a Type 9 boat, Skipper, he said after a moment. We should have a 2-knot speed advantage over him. We'll blow him out of the water before we overtake him, Matthews said grimly. Remember, he's got 2 stern tubes instead of 1 like the Type 7 boats. He's bigger and slower, and he's supposed to be a better torpedo platform in deep water, which means he's not very maneuverable. Let's see just how nimble he is. Gun crew, he shouted forward. Fire for effect. Chief Conroy, gunner's mate second class Herbert Robinson, and Chief gunner's mate Salvatore Gennaro were on the 3-inch deck gun. As soon as they heard the order, Gennaro made a minor adjustment on the range and fired the first shot. U-534. Incoming fire, yelled Wirtz from the bridge of the U-boat as soon as he saw the muzzle flash from the American's deck gun. Right 10 degrees. Below in the conning tower, the helmsman immediately put his rudder over and U-534 heeled to port while she turned to starboard. The conning tower crew could hear the sound of ripping linen as a 3-inch shell arced towards them and winced as the shell hit the water 50 meters off the port quarter, exploding on impact. The resulting geyser of water drenched the U-boat's gun crew on the forward deck as well as the bridge crew. Helm, left 10 degrees, called Wirtz. Stand by on stern tubes 1 and 2. Stern tubes ready, Capitan, said von Kuiper from his station in the conning tower as he watched the American sub through through the periscope. Range, 5.5 kilometers. Angle on the stern, 15 degrees. Depth, 6 meters. Rudder amidships, Wirtz ordered. There was another flash and boom from the American gun. Rudder left 10 degrees. Herman, recalculate solution as soon as we come back to our base course. Then we will fire. The American shell exploded in the water less than 40 meters off the starboard bow. They were getting closer, Wirtz saw. USS Barb. We've got him bracketed, Matthews said excitedly. And we're gaining ground too, Dunaway observed. We've got the range on him, but his damn zigzagging is throwing our aim off. That's okay, Matthews said. Every time he turns, it throws his firing solution into the head. He can't get a good stern shot at us if he keeps moving his ass back and forth. Keep it up, guns, he yelled at Gennaro. Look for a 10-degree correction with each shot. Gennaro looked back at the bridge and nodded. He adjusted the declination and azimuth of the gun and fired again. U-534. The next shot from the Americans exploded 20 meters off the starboard side of the bridge. Wirtz ducked as another deluge of warm, salty water cascaded onto the conning tower. He also heard several plinks against the bridge bulkhead, as well as a scream from the forward deck. Rudder amidships, he called, and stood up to see two members of his gun crew lying on the deck, holding their legs. Get those men below, he called to the crew. All hands below. Prepare to dive, Herman, he said into the voice tube. Firing solution. Solution set, Herr Captain, said von Kuiper calmly. Match bearings and fire 1. Fire 2. He looked aft and saw the telltale wakes that indicated that both torpedoes were away. Sonar reports both weapons running normally, sir, von Kuiper reported. Very well. He will have to maneuver to evade them. Depth under the keel, 135 meters, sir. Wentz shook his head. We need to be in deeper water, but this cannot be helped. Dive the boat. Make your depth 110 meters. Left full rudder. USS Barb. Torpedoes in the water, dead ahead, yelled one of the lookouts. Sonar reports 2 fish in the water, Quincy reported. Sonar also reports contact submerging, Captain. Dunaway watched as the German crew left the bridge and the U-boat began to settle deeper into the water. Yep, he said, he's going under, Skipper. Matthews watched the track of the torpedoes and saw that the bubbling wakes were slightly diverging, but not enough for him to maintain his course and have them pass harmlessly to either side of the boat. He would have to make a radical turn to lose them, and that would mean losing precious ground on the chase. Right full rudder, he yelled. Barb heeled over as she turned to starboard, and Matthews watched the torpedo wakes, praying silently that they would pass to his left. Clear the bridge, he ordered. Lookouts below. Guns, secure your weapons and get below. Robert, prepare to dive the boat. Aye, sir. The lookouts, talker, and quartermaster hustled down the hatch while the gun crew ran after, climbing into the conning tower and following them. Dunaway remained a moment on the bridge. How we looking, Skipper? They're tracking to port, he said, looking through his binoculars. Rudder amidships, he said in the voice tube. Yeah, they're going to miss. Look. He pointed to the twin bubble wakes that ran by the port side of the submarine less than 10 yards away. Phew, said Dunaway, his face shiny with perspiration. That was too close, sir. Yeah. Take her down to periscope depth and let's go get this guy. Santiago 4. Long day, lassies, Hawthorne said as the American operators came off ship. He watched them get up from the boards and tiredly shuffle out of the door of the operations center and down to the mess hall and dormitories. The French operators were already on the board, getting their headsets comfortable on their ears and adjusting the volume and tone controls. Barbara handled her headset to Desjardins and showed her the contact log for the previous shift. Just normal traffic this evening, Dominique, she said as she rubbed her eyes. Merci, bon ami, Desjardins said pleasantly. A marked change had come over the French supervisor, and to a lesser degree her operators, since she had worked with Carstairs and Barbara on the queer musical tones. She smiled more than normal and even joined in the canasta and acey-deucey games with her American and British counterparts, much to their surprise and delight. Why don't you take your lot upstairs for some fresh air? Hawthorne asked Barbara before she left the operations center. Sir Charles has finally sent over a couple of Royal Marines to look after us, so I should think it will be secure enough for you all to stretch your legs a bit and see the stars. Roger would be happy to see you, as well, I should think. Barbara gratefully accepted the offer. It had been several days since Hawthorne had allowed the girls any furlough time into Swansea, and she quickly passed the news to her subordinates back in the barracks. They immediately perked up. Royal Marines? Asked Catherine Reese, fumbling in her bureau. Where's my compact? I need to freshen up. Sorry, dear, but I don't think a little bit of makeup's going to help that face, Thelma Taylor teased, even as she checked her own face in the mirror. Reed shot her a withering stare. Watch it, Thelma, she retorted. No Englishman in his right mind would give you a second look. Girls, said Barbara soothingly. We're all on the same side, remember? And anyway, Hawthorne has expressly forbidden any sort of fraternization with anybody in uniform. The others all looked at her crestfallen. We're just going upstairs to get some fresh air, and the Marines are there to look after us. You can go up and smoke or just walk around, but remember to stay close to the hut. The girls nevertheless made sure that their uniforms were in order and that their hair and makeup were just so before heading upstairs. There were several flights of wooden stairs leading from the operations complex up to the quasi-farmhouse that served as Santiago IV's cover. Roger Bartlett, the aged caretaker who actually lived in the farmhouse, on MI5's payroll no less, was cooking sausages in the tiny kitchen when the American officers emerged from the hidden door in his walk-in pantry. He jumped away from his skillet in surprise. Bless me, he said, with one gnarled hand over his chest. Haven't seen you up here in a bit, have I? Wasn't expecting you lot to come up in this night, neither. But it's well that you're here. I've got some lovely bangers sizzling in the pan, I do, if you'd like a bite. Smells wonderful, Roger, Barbara said politely, but we're just going up to have a little walk outside and take in the air. Ah, he cackled with a wink. And perhaps see the Marines too, eh? Go on, lass, have yourself a fine time. I'm making plenty of grub, mind, if you start getting hungry. Thanks, Roger, she said. She gave him a peck on the cheek. You're a dear. The old man flushed scarlet and ambled back over to his pan, muttering. Barbara and the other waves went through the small sitting room at the front of the house and stepped out on the front porch. A very fit-looking sergeant in Royal Commando livery stepped forward from the shadows and snapped off a smart salute. Good evening, ladies, he said softly. Sergeant First Class Reginald Wallace, number 40, Commando Battalion. Thelma and Catherine giggled coquettishly as Sergeant Wallace had a very rugged, handsome face and broad shoulders over which was slung his rifle. The other junior women, Hattie Anderson and Eunice Bunker, merely rolled their eyes and lit their cigarettes, wandering out onto the front garden of the dwelling and looking up at the cloudy sky. Barbara returned the salute. As you were, Sergeant, she said. Are you the boss Marine here tonight? That's right, Lieutenant, he said crisply. I have another man in the back garden near the windmill and another in the lane beyond the front fence. We will be here until 0500 tomorrow morning, after which we will be relieved by others from our unit. Air Commodore Remington has ordered guards for all installations like this henceforth, so you will be seeing quite a bit more of us. He smiled briefly as Thelma and Catherine, and then watched Hattie and Eunice as they ambled about the front garden, puffing on their cigarettes. I should make sure that your young ensigns there do not wander beyond the garden, Lieutenant, he warned. We have specific orders from above to watch for any saboteurs, and there's no telling if there are any about. Okay by me, Sergeant, Barbara said, stretching her arms overhead. We're just out here for some fresh air before supper. All right, girls, she said to Thelma and Catherine. Shoo, take a walk or something. The pair moved off reluctantly, whispering and giggling like schoolgirls. Barbara stepped off of the porch and looked up at the sky. The wind was picking up out of the northeast, and it was turning cooler. She could see no stars, but she was aware that the low-flying clouds were moving over their heads at a good clip. Behind the dwelling, she could hear the windmill creaking as it spun atop the antenna tower. There were some flashes in the sky off to the northeast, accompanied by the distant low rumbling of thunder. What's with the weather, Sarge? She asked. Are we in for a blow? Aye, that we are, Mum, he said. It looks to be a whopper by all accounts. USS Barb. Nothing, Skipper, said Norris, shaking his head. Sorry, sir. Matthews swore under his breath and looked at Dunaway as they stood outside the sonar shack. It had been nearly 2 hours since their surface attack on the German U-boat, and they had lost contact with their quarry almost as soon as it had submerged. They had motored along at 100 feet, barely making steerage and listening as they followed the English coast. Dunaway shook his head and pulled some crackers out of his shirt pocket. Skipper, he said as he conveyed a saltine into his mouth, he's going to be around here somewhere. I can't imagine that he got too far away. Yeah, well, with the surface conditions going to hell, Matthew said helplessly, he could have motored off without us knowing it. Overhead, the leading elements of a storm system that was currently lashing central England were now playing havoc with the seas, whipping the shallow channel into froth where sonar performance was problematic at best. Damn it, he said quietly as he puzzled over the situation. You think he could just be sitting on the bottom with everything cut back, just waiting for us to slip past? Dunaway asked. He could be, Robert, but I sure as hell wouldn't. If it was me, I'd use the storm as a cover and make a break for the French coast. For all I know, he's already made port somewhere in Brittany and is hoisting a stein while he laughs at the nitwits on that American boat. Active search? Dunaway asked. Maybe he'll flush him off the bottom if he's there. Yeah, and if he's there, it might just give him a firing solution on us. No, we can't risk it. He stalked over to the chart table where two quartermaster's mates were plotting their position. Okay, he said softly. We're here about 30 miles, give or take, southwest of Devon. Its last course was 260 true, but... He ran his fingers over the chart several times, working over possible courses in his mind. Dunaway joined him, munching softly on the crackers. Finally, Matthews looked up from the chart and pursed his lips. Robert, he said pensively, I've got a crazy idea, and I'll bet that crowd skipper had the very same one. Tell me what you think. U-534. I think we have lost him for good this time, Von Kuiper said. You are a crafty one, my Capitan. Bert said nothing but continued to look aft through his binoculars. The boat was rolling noticeably on the rough seas as the approaching storm roiled the waves. They were on the surface, as they had been for the last hour or so, motoring on their diesels at 10 knots. As soon as they had submerged, Bert had ordered a hard turn to starboard towards the English coast. After the American boat had slid past him into the deeper waters in the middle of the channel, he had crept along at periscope depth, hugging the coast on a southerly course. An hour after diving, they had surfaced again during cover of darkness and began their bold run southwest in the hopes of turning back towards France and making port at Saint-Malo, where they could refuel and enjoy a brief liberty. I do not trust this American captain, Bert said as the rain began to pelt against the metal of the conning tower. Have you fixed our position yet, Herman? I do not want to venture into the Celtic Sea. Von Kuiper spoke over the bridge voice tube with the quartermaster in the conning tower. We are very near to the end of the Cornish Peninsula, Capitan, he reported. I believe the Tommies call the place Land's End. Land's End, Bert asked in alarm. Verdammt, we've come too far westerly, Herman. What is our heading? Von Kuiper consulted the binnacle. 245, sir, he said, as lightning flashed overhead and the rain began to fall in earnest. He is to our southeast now, I think, Bert said, thinking about the American boat that lurks somewhere in the channel behind him. We must turn for France and hope he cannot hear us. Come left to 175, all ahead standard. USS Barb. I've got a sawbuck that says this character's on the surface right about here, Matthew said as he stabbed a point on the map with his index finger. Land's End? Dunaway asked, now crunching graham crackers. Gee, Skipper, I don't know. Robert, he's there, Matthew said, his eyes alight. I can feel him. He's not down on the bottom, and he hasn't turned for France yet. He studied the map. No, he said softly, as though to someone who wasn't there. No, you wanted to make sure that you lost us before you turned for home. You wanted to use the storm to your advantage. You didn't want to turn too quickly and risk losing the Fuhrer's boat, because you knew that you couldn't lose us in this shallow water. Dunaway looked at him sidelong, waiting for his strange muttering to stop. It's okay, Robert, he said aloud. I know where this bastard is now. Make your course. 245, all ahead 2/3. Bring us to periscope depth smartly. He climbed up to the conning tower where he took his usual seat on the lip of the control room hatch as Dunaway conned the sub to a depth of 30 feet. Energize the radar, Mr. Dunaway. Prepare to raise the masts. Swansea whales. The atmospheric storm that he had successfully avoided in the small boat was nearly on top of him. He crept along the underbrush to the side of the gravel path near the human communication team's structure. He could see it at the top of the small hill ahead. Behind it stood the tower housing the communications antenna. Using his sight, He knew that the antenna would be the target with the highest probability of mission success. As a scout, he was weaponless, and he knew that the odds of him succeeding decreased geometrically if he were to make any sort of contact with the humans. He heard the sounds of feet crunching on gravel fairly close by. He melted further into the dark brush and was now aware of a decrease in atmospheric pressure and temperature, as well as an increase in wind velocity and humidity. Soon, he knew, liquid water would fall from the clouds, which would greatly increase his odds of success. The sounds of a human on the path ahead forced him deeper into the brush. Presently, a human carrying some sort of projectile weapon appeared around the bend of the path. Out of the creature's mouth issued a thin smoke, and in his hand was a slow-burning white stick. He briefly considered overpowering this creature and taking its weapon, but he was not a warrior. His trade was one of stealth and watchfulness. He waited until the human had turned to retrace his steps before carefully moving towards the structure. As he drew closer to the short barrier that demarcated the property line, he heard other voices. This made him stop into the darkness of a large shrub near the barrier. He watched as two human females walked up slowly in his direction. They appeared to be fatigued and unalert, which gave him an idea. Concentrating, he bent his thoughts toward the contact team. Wolfschanze. "May I offer you a drink, gentlemen?" Hitler asked as several stewards with his personal valet Heinz Lange at their head brought in chilled buckets of champagne. "I rarely drink myself, but I feel this moment deserves some sort of recognition." Goring, although still rather shaken from seeing the alien's orbs, looked up hopefully and licked his lips. The visitors turned to one another slowly, again as if in silent consultation. "We do not consume beverages, Chancellor," Oracle said darkly. Hitler turned his head quizzically to one side. "9?" he asked. "No, of course not. I'm sure your people do other things to mark momentous occasions, do they not?" Excuse me. He motioned for Lange to bring him a bottle. "We nourish ourselves in other ways," said Sayer mysteriously. "I should be very impressed to learn how, Herr Sayer," Mengele said eagerly as he studied the orbs, now carefully packed into a padded container with a glass top. "I'll bet you would," Goring mumbled with a shudder. As Lange and the other stewards gathered glasses from the buffet that sat along the one wall, and as Hitler popped the cork on the first bottle, the three visitors again turned towards each other. Hitler poured several glasses, draining the first bottle, and passed them around, smiling. Goring gratefully accepted his and swallowed the contents in a single gulp. He stifled a belch and held his glass out for a refill. Rommel looked at him in disgust and refused the drink that Lange offered. Instead, he watched the visitors with intense curiosity. They stood at the far end of the conference table, each turned to face the others in a dark huddle of sorts. Rommel caught Himmler's eye with a raised eyebrow and beckoned towards the aliens with a curt nod. Himmler, feigning great interest in his champagne, watched them over the rims of his round eyeglasses. At length, as most of the Nazis were toasting and drinking, Sayer turned slowly to face the group. "Chancellor," he said slowly, "we will leave you to your celebratory consumption while we tend to other more pressing matters." "Oh?" Hitler asked, narrowing his dark eyes. "Is it time to call your fleet?" "No," Oracle responded evasively. "Not yet." "Is something happening that we should be concerned about?" Himmler asked. "You should be concerned about everything, Himmler," Warzinger responded, causing the head of the SS to furrow his brow. "However, in this matter, it would be best for you to wait. There are many variables in play right now." "I don't understand," Himmler said guardedly. "Nor do I," said Hitler, as alarm registered on his face. "You aren't making any sense." "Whether we do or not makes no difference to you," said Oracle. "We will return to the lounge now and gather our thoughts." "Why?" asked Hitler sharply. "I demand that you speak more clearly. You have no right." "Chancellor," said Sayer firmly, "do not speak of rights to us. Events are now in motion that will affect you in time. Some of these are within our ability to influence to our mutual advantage. Some, of course, are not. We will retire for a time and do what we can to ensure their success. We will speak with you again as needs arise." With that, he and his companions strode noiselessly from the conference room. "What do you make of that?" Hitler asked no one in particular. Rommel stubbed out a cigarette and reached for a nearby bottle. "I told you we were making a pact with the devil, mein Fuhrer," he said bitterly. "I think I'll have that drink now. Heaven knows I need it." Okay, that was Chapter 7. We'll do Chapter 8 on the next podcast. Things are really heating up in the book, so if you are tuning in, stay with us on subsequent podcast episodes because the book is things are going to be happening really quick. No spoilers, obviously, but as one who knows the material intimately, I'm just going to tell you, got some good stuff coming up. You don't want to miss it. So make sure you tune in. I appreciate you tuning in today. We got a big weekend. We got, again, tomorrow we're going to do our top 10. I think you'll enjoy that one. Saturday, I'll be in Bridgeport with Susan and Brandon. I'm going to be off-roading in the Jeep with others in the group, and so that'll be a fun day. And of course, Sunday's going to be Father's Day, so we'll have everybody over here at Starbase One. So, to coin the phrase, the love you send out returns to you in time. So live long and prosper, and talk to you soon.